"You didn't pay a dime for this dinner, so you don't get a plate," that's what my daughter-in-law shouted right there in front of everyone on Thanksgiving night. The whole table went silent. And me, a 70-year-old father, I just sat there holding an empty fork, unable to believe what I'd just heard. I used to think I was loved. Turns out I was just a burden. If you've ever been hurt by your own family, hit subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Because this story, it might make you rethink what the word family really means. I still remember that moment so clearly when the whole room suddenly went cold, even though the Texas sun was still shining bright outside. Samantha stood across from me, her eyes like ice. Michael, my son, just kept his head down, pretending to carve the turkey. I sat there, with an empty plate, a glass of water, surrounded by a Thanksgiving feast, feeling like I'd just been erased from my own family. No one dared to look at me. No one said a word, only the clinking of silverware and the awkward laughter of my two little grandkids who didn't understand what was happening. My name is Richard Hall. I'm 70 years old, widowed for 5 years now. I spent my whole life as a construction engineer helping build homes all over Austin, Texas. And yet now here I was, kicked out of my own family's dinner table because I supposedly didn't contribute enough. The irony still stings. After Margaret, my wife, passed away, I moved in with my son. Michael said, "Come live with us, Dad. The house is big, and the kids will love having their grandpa around." I believed him. I sold my condo, moved in, even chipped in $20,000 to fix the backyard and replace the roof. And tonight, Samantha said I didn't contribute. I didn't get angry. I didn't talk back. I just sat there, memorizing every face, every averted glance. I knew then sometimes silence cuts deeper than cruelty. When dessert came around, I stood up and quietly said, "Thank you for dinner. I'm full." No one answered. Samantha just smirked. I walked out to the backyard and looked at the string lights I'd hung the week before. Each bulb glowed softly, but inside, everything felt dark. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to the wind whistle through the cracks, thinking about Margaret. She always said my heart was too soft, that sometimes being kind can be a mistake. Maybe she was right. The next morning I got up early thinking a walk might help, but as I passed the kitchen I heard Samantha's voice. "Don't you see? He just sits there doing nothing. It's time we put him in a nursing home." Michael hesitated. "I'm not sure. It's almost the end of the year. He still has his pension." "Exactly," she said. "That's why we need to act now, before he changes his mind or moves the money." I froze. Every word cut like a knife. I stepped back quietly, trying not to breathe. So, it wasn't just last night's anger. They'd planned this. I went to my room, opened the drawer, and took out my savings book. $80,000. Everything I'd saved in 10 years of retirement. I'd put it under Michael's name, too, to help manage things. Now I saw how naive I'd been. All day I pretended things were normal. I played with the grandkids. I smiled when Samantha posted photos online, writing a warm and happy family Thanksgiving. But inside, I was planning my escape. That night I called Linda, an old coworker from my construction days. She lives in Tucson now, running a community housing project for seniors. When I told her a little of what happened, she just said, "Richard, don't say another word. Pack your things and come here. You'll have a place and people who truly value you." I didn't tell her then that I had a recording the conversation between Michael and Samantha that morning. My smartwatch had captured it automatically. Old habits. Engineers always plan for backup, and this time it might just save me. I stayed up all night writing a short note. "Thank you for showing me where I stand in this house." I folded it, slipped it into an envelope. When dawn broke, I packed a few clothes, my papers, and a USB with the recording. Before leaving, I changed the lock on my door and left a fake key behind. A part of me wanted them to open it and find that note first. On the bus out of Austin, I watched the red oaks blazing in the late autumn sun. I knew I was leaving everything behind, but I also knew I was finally starting over. And this time, no one will ever step on my dignity again. The bus pulled away from Austin, leaving behind every bitter trace of that Thanksgiving night. I sat by the window watching the oak trees fade into the distance, still hearing Samantha's voice echoing in my head. "You didn't pay a dime, so you don't get a plate." I repeated it silently. This time it didn't hurt. It just felt cold. Maybe that's what betrayal does. It freezes you until you can't even cry anymore. The bus rolled onto the highway toward Tucson, where Linda was waiting. I didn't know exactly what I'd do next, but I knew one thing: I had to leave the place where kindness meant nothing. Linda texted me, "Call me when you arrive. I'll come get you." Short, simple, yet warmer than any word my family had said to me in years. When I reached Tucson, Linda was there right on time, her silver pickup parked by the curb. She smiled, her eyes lined with years of experience. "You still look good, Richard," she said. "Come on, let's get you home." Her house sat in a quiet suburb overlooking the Santa Catalina Mountains. Not fancy, but neat, warm, filled with sunlight. I helped her fix a few leaky pipes, checked the wiring in her small workshop out back. It felt good to be useful again, to feel alive. That evening, Linda poured me a cup of tea. After a long silence, she asked, "So, you're just going to let this go?" I shook my head. "No, Linda. I need to know how far they went. I have to make sure they don't fool me again." And that's when the plan began. I called Michael, keeping my voice calm. "I'm staying with an old friend for a few days. Don't worry. Everything's fine here." He sounded relieved, then hesitated. Dad, are you still planning to send your usual deposit at the end of the month?" I said. "I'll have to review that. I want to check the account first." The silence that followed told me everything. Their concern wasn't for me. It was for the money. That night, I logged into the joint account. The balance was under $500. The rest, nearly $80,000, had been transferred to a secondary account under Michael and Samantha's names. One day after Thanksgiving. I wasn't surprised. Still, my chest ached. If I reacted out of anger, they'd cover their tracks fast. But if I stayed calm, I could bring everything to light the right way. The next morning, I went to a First Trust Bank branch in Tucson. A young woman named Clara listened carefully as I explained. After checking the records, she frowned slightly. "Mr. Hall, this transaction looks suspicious. Would you like me to open a fraud investigation?" I nodded. "Do whatever you need. I just want everything to be clear." Clara froze. The account immediately restored my access and filed a report to the authorities within 24 hours. I signed the papers, feeling strangely light. 10 years as an engineer taught me one thing. Sometimes one well-placed lock can stop an entire system from collapsing. That evening, I got a flood of missed calls. Michael, then Samantha. I didn't answer. A text came through Dad. "Something's wrong with the account. The bank says it's a system error. Do you know what's going on?" I didn't reply. But I knew. They were starting to panic. Linda looked at me and asked softly, "Do you feel satisfied now?" I gave a faint smile. "No. Just sorry for people who value money more than blood." 3 days later, it happened. The bank turned the case over to the police, citing possible elder financial abuse. Samantha was summoned for questioning. Michael, too. I didn't want to see them in that situation, but they had chosen this path themselves. The news spread fast around their neighborhood. "Did you hear that couple's under investigation for stealing their father's pension?" Linda told me what people were saying. I just stared out the window. No satisfaction, just a heavy, quiet sadness. One afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. A deep male voice said, "Mr. Hall, this is Sergeant Lopez from the Austin Police Department. We reviewed the recording you provided. Thank you for your cooperation. But there's something you should know. Your daughter-in-law had a prior complaint for taking her own mother's assets. Seems this isn't her first time." I went silent. So, I was just the next name on her list. That night I sat on the porch looking up at the stars scattered across the Arizona sky. And I realized betrayal isn't the worst thing. The worst is knowing the person you trusted never truly cared in the first place. I gripped the warm cup of tea in my hands. Linda came out, laid a gentle hand on my shoulder, and whispered, "At least now you're free." I nodded. Yeah. But freedom comes with a cost. And I knew from that moment on my life was entering a new chapter, one where I wasn't anyone's burden anymore, but the author of my own story. I thought things would finally calm down once the police got involved. But just a few days later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Michael, Samantha, even unknown numbers. I didn't answer any of them. I needed time to breathe, to piece everything together. When trust is broken, even an apology sounds empty. Linda noticed my silence. One morning she handed me a cup of hot coffee and said, "Richard, what's next? You planning to stay here forever?" I looked out the window. Sunlight spilling over the Santa Catalina Mountains, glowing like gold dust. "I don't know yet," I said quietly. "But I can't just hide. They need to face the consequences of what they've done." I began to form a plan not out of revenge, but to make them confront the truth. I remembered what Margaret once told me. Sometimes the biggest lessons don't come from anger, but from silence and the right action at the right time. That night I sat at Linda's small desk, opened my old laptop, and logged into the same bank account Michael thought I hadn't touched. I created a new mock account, called it Richard Trust Fund. Then I transferred $2,000 into it, just enough to look tempting to desperate eyes. After that, I uploaded a fake document labeled Life Insurance Policy, $100,000 into a shared cloud folder that Michael still had access to. If they hadn't changed, I knew they'd take the bait. 3 days passed. Just as I expected, an email came in, unauthorized login from an IP address in Austin. I didn't feel angry, just pity. Pity for how foolish greed can make people. But there was one more step. I needed everything to be recorded legally. So I went down to the Tucson police station to meet Sergeant Lopez, the same officer from before. "I don't want them to go to jail," I told him. "I just want them to understand what loss feels like." Lopez gave a knowing smile. "We understand. We'll let them walk right into their own trap." 3 days later, the bank reported a flagged withdrawal request from that same mock account. The security system froze the transaction automatically and alerted the authorities. Samantha was summoned again for questioning. Michael was suspended from work after word got out. I didn't feel joy or pain, just lightness. Maybe because for the first time I wasn't afraid of being alone anymore. Linda told me I should get away for a few days, clear my head. She invited me to the senior housing project her company was building on the outskirts of Tucson. "We need someone with technical experience," she said. "You're perfect for it." I agreed, thinking I'd just help a little. But soon I got caught up in the work. I helped recalculate the foundation structure, suggested cheaper materials. People started calling me Mr. Hall the Builder. It had been so long since someone said my name with respect. One young engineer asked, "Sir, do you do this for money or for passion?" I smiled. Both, I guess. But these days, money doesn't mean that much anymore. Day by day, I felt myself coming back to life. In the evenings, Linda and I cooked together, shared old stories. Sometimes she teased, "If you ever go back to Austin, I bet they'd be terrified." I laughed. If they're scared, that's good. Fear's the first step toward regret. One night, as I was checking emails, a message popped up from an unknown number. "Dad, we know you set this up, but please listen. We're struggling. Give us a chance to talk." I didn't reply right away. I just sat there watching the screen glow, then fade. Part of me knew Michael might finally be feeling remorse, but I also knew remorse only matters when it comes with action. The next morning I went to the site with Linda. While I was showing the crew how to check a load-bearing wall, my phone rang. It was Sergeant Lopez. "Mr. Hall," he said, "the bank confirmed another withdrawal attempt, this time in person at a branch in Austin. We've got video evidence." I took a slow breath. "Thank you, Lopez. Let them figure it out themselves. That evening I stood on the balcony watching the sunset spread across the red desert. The light turned everything gold and quiet. I wasn't angry anymore. Maybe the truest revenge is simply living well while they drown in the weight of their own mistakes. I took a deep breath. Tomorrow I'd start my first official day at the new site. I was no longer the father banned from Thanksgiving dinner. I was Richard Hall, the man who finally learned how to take his life back, piece by piece, day by day. I thought it would end there, that after their accounts were frozen, Michael and Samantha would finally stay quiet. But life, it's never that simple. One morning in early February, I was up on the roof with the crew checking the beams on the new senior housing project when Linda came running toward me holding her phone. "Richard," she said, "you need to see this." On the screen was a local news clip from Austin young couple under investigation for financial fraud and theft from an elderly family member. Michael's face appeared on camera, pale, defeated, walking beside Samantha, her eyes darting away from the reporters. I said nothing. No joy. No sorrow. Just emptiness. I used to think I'd feel vindicated when this day came. But when it finally did, all I felt was tired. That night I sat on the porch. Linda brought out 2 cups of tea. She asked softly, "Are you going to talk to them?" I sighed. Not yet. They need to understand loss before they can understand forgiveness. Days went by. I kept working. The Tucson project moved into its final stages, and the company offered me a full-time position as technical consultant. Work kept me steady, gave my mind something to hold on to. But there was still one thing that weighed on me: my 2 grandkids. They weren't to blame for any of this. Yet they were the ones growing up in the wreckage of their parents' mistakes. One afternoon, I got a letter from Austin. No return address. Inside was a small note written in a child's hand. "Grandpa, Mom says you went away because you're mad at us. I miss you." Below it, a crayon drawing an old man holding balloons standing beside 2 kids. I stared at it for a long time, and for the first time in months, I couldn't hold back my tears. The cold inside me melted, replaced by something softer, sadder. Linda saw me sitting there and said quietly, "Maybe it's time to forgive. Not to free them, but to free yourself." That night I wrote a letter to Michael. I saw the news. I'm not angry and I'm not happy either. We all make mistakes, but no one has to keep making them. Take responsibility for what you've done. When you're ready to face me, I'll be here to listen. I mailed it. No phone number. No return address. If they truly wanted to make things right, they'd find a way. 3 weeks passed. I nearly forgot about that letter until one afternoon, while I was guiding a group of volunteer students at the site, a beat-up old car pulled up by the gate. Michael stepped out. Thinner now. Tired. Sunburned. His eyes the same mix of guilt and fear I'd seen in my own mirror years ago. "Dad," he whispered, "I don't even know where to start." I said quietly, "Start with the truth." He told me everything. After the investigation, Samantha was charged with fraud. He was suspended from his job. The bank had repossessed their house. He said that during those long, hopeless days he realized something, that he'd become the very thing he once despised: ungrateful, cold, blinded by money. Now he said, voice shaking, "I just want you to forgive me, not so you'll help us, but so I can teach my kids something better." I looked at him for a long time. Behind the exhaustion, I saw a trace of honesty. I didn't know if it was enough, but it was a start. I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," I said. "But I believe you can rebuild. Teach your kids to cherish what you lost." Michael's eyes filled with tears. He handed me a photo, Ava and Noah smiling at a kitchen table, 2 handmade cards beside them. "We love you, Grandpa." I didn't say a word, just nodded, and looked toward the glowing sunset. Maybe. It was time to let the anger fade. That evening, Linda asked, "Will you see them again?" I smiled faintly. "Soon." But this time I'll meet them where they have to bow their heads. Not in the house where they once humiliated me. Linda raised her cup, smiling. A new beginning, Richard. Not just for you, for all of you. And in that quiet moment, I understood sometimes the deepest punishment isn't making someone suffer, it's making them look in the mirror and see exactly what they've lost. After that day in Tucson, when Michael and I finally spoke, I thought that short, awkward talk between father and son would be the end of it all. But just a week later, the mailman handed me a yellow envelope, careful handwriting on the front. It was from Ava, my 8-year-old granddaughter. Inside were a few small pages covered in crayon drawings, 3 people holding hands under a Christmas tree, and above it, written in a child's uneven letters, "Grandpa, Mom said I can write to you. I hope you come home for Thanksgiving this year. I promise you can have the biggest piece of chicken." I read it over and over, feeling my chest tighten. Those innocent words melted the last bit of anger I'd been holding on to. Linda looked at me quietly and said, "Sometimes forgiveness begins with something that small." I couldn't sleep that night. Forgiving Michael was one thing. Going back to the family that once broke me, that was another. Then I caught sight of an old photo on the wall. Margaret, my late wife, looking straight into the camera with that firm, gentle gaze. She used to say, "Families can break, but if there's still a little decency left, love can mend the cracks." The next morning I wrote a letter back. "Dear Ava, Grandpa was so happy to get your letter. I miss you and Noah very much. This year, if your parents truly want to be together again, I'll come, but not to the old house. We'll meet at the city park, where I used to teach you to fly kites." I mailed it and tried not to think about it again. 3 days later, Michael called. His voice was shaky but steady. "Dad, we read your letter. Thank you for giving us another chance." I said, "This isn't a chance to apologize. It's a chance to prove you've changed." By late November, I returned to Austin after almost a year away. The cold wind carried the smell of roasted turkey through the streets, the whole city humming with Thanksgiving warmth. Michael and the kids were waiting at the park. Samantha wasn't there. Maybe she wasn't ready, or maybe she didn't have the courage yet. I didn't ask. Ava ran to me, hugging me so tight I could hardly breathe. Noah chattered about his new toys, eyes bright with excitement. When I looked up, Michael was standing a few steps away, eyes red. He walked closer and said softly, "Thank you for coming. I know I don't deserve it, but I want you to know I'm starting over. I've found a new job, and I'll repay what you gave me. Not because you asked, but because I need to stand on my own 2 feet." I nodded. Something opened inside me like a window letting in fresh air. "I don't need the money, son. I just need you to keep your word and never let those kids grow up in lies again." Michael nodded, hard tears soaking his shirt. We spread a picnic blanket on the grass, simple meal, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, a few dishes I'd once taught Margaret to make. Ava laughed, her voice clear and bright, telling stories from school. I realized I hadn't heard real laughter at a family table in a long, long time. As the sun began to set, Michael spoke quietly. "Dad, I don't know if Samantha can make things right again, but I promise I won't let her mistakes erase what we have. If it's all right, the kids would like to visit you in Tucson sometimes." I said my door is always open, but only to those who know how to respect it. When it was time to leave, Ava ran after me, pressing a folded paper into my hand. "I drew you smiling," she said. "Mom told me you used to be sad a lot. I want you to smile more." On the paper was a drawing of an old man with silver hair, eyes bright with warmth. And for the first time in years, I recognized him. It was me, not the man who'd been humiliated, but the one who'd found a way to live again. As the bus pulled out of Austin, I looked through the window at the fading oak trees along the road. I smiled, whispering softly, as if Margaret were sitting beside me. "You see, love, I finally learned how to forgive. Life still has its rough edges, I know. It may never be perfect again, but I have back the one thing I thought I'd lost forever: peace and a sense of dignity." And if anyone ever asks me what the greatest lesson was, I'll simply say, it's never too late to stand up, and it's never too late to love the right way. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this story touched something in you, even just a little, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. I still have many real-life stories I want to share, stories about lost forgiveness and the quiet strength we find when life knocks us down. Your one subscription means the world to me. It's what keeps me going one story at a time. Thank you truly.